8 signs you have a truly rare personality. What if all the times you were told you're too much were actually signs of something remarkable? Stick with me, because by the end of this video, you'll see why Carl Jung believed that the very traits society often misunderstands could hold the secret to your life's true calling. Carl Jung once said, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. But what happens when who you really are doesn't fit into the world's expectations? What if your depth, your sensitivity, your unwillingness to settle for surface-level answers aren't weaknesses to be corrected but indicators of a rare and powerful personality type? If you've ever felt out of place in your own world, if people have labeled you as too intense or too complex, that's not by accident. According to Jung's revolutionary insights into human psychology, certain individuals develop what he called differentiated consciousness, a unique way of perceiving life that most people never reach. Here's something truly fascinating. Carl Jung found that people with rare personality types often spend their whole lives believing there's something wrong with them, when in truth, they're functioning at a level of psychological awareness that most people never even touch. But there's a twist, and I'll share that with you in just a moment. Today, we're diving into 8 powerful signs that you may have one of these rare personality types. If you see yourself in these traits, it won't just shift the way you understand your past, it could completely transform your future. But first, let me ask you this. Have you ever felt like your emotional responses are too much? Like you feel things more deeply than everyone else around you? There's actually a psychological reason behind this, and it's not what you might expect. Sign 1. You feel emotional depth that most people can't understand. Jung discovered something extraordinary about emotional intensity, and how it sets certain people apart in ways that are often misunderstood. There's a deeper psychological reason behind this, something Jung uncovered that might surprise you. Sign 1. You feel emotional depth others simply can't grasp. Carl Jung discovered something truly profound about emotional intensity. He found that some people don't just feel emotions, they experience something he described as affect-toned complexes, emotional patterns so rich, they create a deep psychological ripple effect. To put it simply, you don't just feel things, emotions move through you, like powerful ocean currents, deep, intense, and often life-changing. Here's the insight Jung had, the one most people completely overlook. This isn't emotional instability, it's emotional intelligence at its highest form. So why does the world often label you as too sensitive? Because when you feel deeply, you're not being dramatic, you're tapping into layers of emotion that others have been conditioned to shut down. As Jung himself put it, everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. Carl Jung, your emotional intensity isn't a flaw, it's a form of psychological radar. You pick up on what others overlook. You feel the tension no one talks about. You notice when someone's smile doesn't match the sadness in their eyes. You absorb the emotional undercurrents of every moment, because your mind isn't wired for small talk, it's wired for truth. But here's where things get interesting, and where many emotionally deep individuals unknowingly hold themselves back. Jung observed a repeating pattern. The world pressures you to dial it down, to be more practical, more reasonable, less dramatic. But Jung knew something vital, something few people understand. When you suppress your emotional depth, you don't become more balanced, you become fragmented. He called it psychological splitting, when one part of you sees the truth, while another part tries to fit into what the world expects. That inner divide is why you may feel drained, disconnected, or like you're pretending just to survive. But here's the good news. Jung didn't just identify the problem, he also discovered a way to turn this emotional intensity into your greatest source of power. We'll dive into that in sign number 6, and when we get there, it might change the way you see yourself forever. 8 signs you have a truly rare personality. What if all those times you were told you're too much were actually signs of something extraordinary within you? Stick around, because by the end of this video, you'll understand why Carl Jung believed that the very traits society often criticizes could actually point to your highest potential. Jung once said, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. But what happens when your true self doesn't fit into the world's expectations? What if your emotional depth, your sensitivity, your need for meaningful answers aren't flaws to correct, but clues that you belong to a rare and powerful personality type? If you've ever felt like you don't quite belong, if people have told you you're too intense or too complicated, that's not a coincidence. Carl Jung's pioneering work in personality psychology revealed that some individuals operate with a kind of inner awareness that's far beyond the norm. Jung found that certain individuals possess something he called differentiated consciousness, a heightened way of perceiving reality that most people never reach. And here's where it gets fascinating. Many of these rare individuals spend their whole lives feeling like something is wrong with them, when in fact, they're functioning at a level of emotional and psychological depth that's truly uncommon. But there's a twist, and I'll reveal that in just a moment. Today, we're uncovering 8 clear signs that you might have one of these rare personality types. And if you recognize yourself in them, it won't just reshape how you see your past, it could completely transform your future. But first, let me ask you a simple question. Have you ever felt like your emotional reactions are too much compared to everyone else around you? There's actually a psychological explanation behind this, one that Jung uncovered, and it's probably not what you'd expect. Sign 1. You experience emotional depth that others can't fathom. Carl Jung discovered something extraordinary about emotional intensity. He found that some individuals don't merely feel emotions, they experience what he described as affect-toned complexes, powerful emotional patterns that resonate deeply within the psyche. In simpler terms, you don't just have emotions, your emotions move through you, like powerful waves in the ocean. They shape, shift, and transform you from within. Now here's the part most people completely miss. This isn't emotional instability, it's emotional depth and sophistication. So why does society often make you feel like something's wrong with you? Because when you feel this deeply, you're not being overly sensitive, you're tuning into emotional layers most people have been conditioned to ignore or suppress. As Jung once put it, everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. Carl Jung, your emotional intensity isn't a weakness, it's like an internal radar, constantly picking up what others miss. You sense the unsaid tension in a room. You notice when someone's smile doesn't match the sadness in their eyes. You absorb the emotional energy of every encounter, not because you're dramatic, but because your mind is built for depth, not for small talk. But here's where it gets really interesting, and where many people with this rare gift unknowingly hold themselves back. Jung discovered a common trap among emotionally deep individuals, a pattern that leads them to sabotage their own strengths. Society pressures you to tone it down, to be more reasonable, to stop overreacting. But Jung knew the truth. When you suppress this emotional depth, you don't become balanced, you become fragmented. You begin to experience what he called psychological splitting, where one part of you sees the truth, while another part struggles to fit in. This is likely why you felt drained trying to play a role that never truly fit. But what if I told you that Jung actually found a way to turn this emotional depth from something overwhelming into your greatest inner power? We'll explore that breakthrough in sign number 6. Sign 2. You question everything with relentless curiosity. Carl Jung believed that most people go through life in a kind of unconscious trance. They absorb beliefs, roles, and expectations without ever examining them. But you can't help but dig beneath the surface. Jung would have recognized you as someone with a highly active thinking function, a mind that isn't satisfied with easy answers. And here's the key insight. Jung discovered that people who constantly question the world around them aren't being rebellious, they're being psychologically honest. But that honesty comes with a hidden cost, one most don't recognize until they're already paying the price. You don't just ask what, you ask why. Why do people stay trapped in relationships that slowly break them? Why do we keep accepting systems that clearly don't serve us? Why do we pretend shallow conversations count as real connection? Your mind is always searching for what lies beneath the surface. Carl Jung referred to this as the transcendent function, the psychological ability to look beyond current reality and imagine new possibilities. While most people accept the world as it is, you're already asking what could be different, what could be better, what could be more real and authentic. But here's the paradox Jung uncovered. The clearer your vision becomes, the more alone you might feel. Why? Because your questions often disturb the illusions others rely on to feel safe. When you challenge the surface, you're not just looking for truth, you're confronting the emotional walls people build to protect themselves from it. That's why you may have been labeled as too negative or overly critical. But in truth, you're not being cynical, you're being bravely honest. Jung discovered something fascinating about individuals like you. You possess what he called prophetic consciousness, the ability to sense where things are headed long before others catch on. But this rare gift carries a responsibility, one I'll reveal in the final sign. And trust me, it might just surprise you. Sign 3. You've developed fierce independence as a form of psychological survival. Carl Jung once said, the most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. And you've had to learn exactly how to do that, not because you wanted to, but because life gave you no other choice. According to Jung, those with rare psychological makeups often develop something called individuated consciousness much earlier than most, usually as a result of facing hardship or feeling like an outsider. Here's what Jung understood, something even many therapists overlook. Your independence isn't just a defense mechanism, it's a milestone. It's the hard-earned result of knowing who you are, even when the world tried to convince you otherwise. But society will often try to convince you that your independence is a problem. And here's why that's so dangerous. You've learned, often through painful lessons, that relying on others to define your worth is like sinking into psychological quicksand. So, you chose a different path. You built yourself. You stood on your own, sometimes in silence, sometimes in struggle, and shaped an identity that couldn't be shaken by anyone's opinion or absence. Jung called this process individuation, the psychological journey toward becoming whole. Most people never walk that full path, because it requires facing what Jung described as the shadow, the hidden parts of yourself that society told you to reject. But here's where things get complicated. That self-made independence, it draws in people who admire your strength, and at the same time, it pushes away those who feel threatened by it. Jung uncovered a powerful pattern in the way highly independent individuals navigate relationships, and once you understand it, everything changes. You're not looking for someone to complete you, because you've already done the inner work to become whole on your own. That means you don't enter relationships out of need but out of choice. You don't want to be rescued. You want a partner who can walk beside you, as both of you continue evolving. Jung found something profound about those who reach this level of independence. They tend to attract two very different kinds of energy, authentic love and manipulative control. The challenge is knowing how to tell them apart. And in sign number 7, I'll reveal Jung's method for recognizing the difference before it's too late.